Very good morning to the 1 million Women to Tech daily update. Today we have a very special guest here, Professor Father Dr. Andrew Pinsent, who I have had the wonderful opportunity to meet at the University of Oxford. And since many of you requested more details about the Corpus Thomisticum Hackathon, I thought we would go through what has been done with the Corpus Thomisticum and what it is that is the vision of Father Andrew, and how those who actually submit a proposal could submit it so that it's meaningful and interesting, and what are the potentials to take this forward. So I'll give it over to you.
Okay, shall I start speaking now?
Please.
All right. So my name is Father Andrew Pinsent. I work here in the Theology and Religion faculty with a background in particle physics. Now, I'm very interested in the use of digital humanities, and we have a fantastic project that's yet to be realized in the world, which is to take the works of Thomas Aquinas and make them, should we say, visually accessible. So we have fantastic complexity in his writings, but we need the tools to be able to jump in and swim through them and see all the connections, and but without losing context. So I have to think at the moment that wandering into the works of Thomas Aquinas is like an ant walking into a cathedral, and it's very hard to get a sense of perspective. Now, with modern information technology, we can do searches, of course, and all this work's been digitized for many years, but the interfaces are not very good. So this is not, should we say, a conventional hacking project, but what we're looking for are good ideas for the visual representation of data. So if you want a rough parallel, think of the difference between the old style computers and what was done with the smartphone. Suddenly something's intuitive, easy to use, and so on. So we're going to run a competition. I haven't formally announced it yet, so this is just a few preliminary thoughts for you to get to think about. But what we're hoping to do is to find people who can help us do these visual design elements, who can enable us to get details of Aquinas' work without losing a sense of context, without getting lost. So if you give an ant a jetpack, the ant can just zoom around the cathedral, but it doesn't mean that the ant can see the cathedral. It's just too big. It's too overwhelming, and we want to find the visualization tools to help us resolve that problem. So what else shall I say?
Can we, if it's all right, I would love to share my screen and pull up I have the corpusthomisticum.org website, so we could look through. I would love you to point out some of the maybe famous works and some examples of how the current one is being navigated.
Yes.
And I think that's a good start. So let me just attempt screen sharing, and I believe I am successful.
Right. So you could go to Opera Omnia of St. Thomas. So that first, see various links here, and if I recall, let's go. If you go to index, it should be able to. If you go down the page a bit, so further down. So let's go to the Summa Theologiae. Let's move up a bit. Go up a bit, please. No, down, that's it. Okay, so let's look at the question 2. So prima pars, question 2, that's great. And look down here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And actually, if you go to the index, you should be able to get a list of all the different parts there. So let's go to Article 3. And Article 3, add 3. So just go arg1.
Arg1.
Up a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So let's move up just very slightly on that page. And it's in Latin, but basically, this is Aquinas' famous article on the question of does God exist? And he starts by saying it seems that God does not exist, and he gives reasons. So there are two arguments presented against here, and then he gives what's called a sed contra statement, where he expects the argument to go. So he expects the argument to end up as God does exist. And then in the central section, just move down a little bit, he gives, these are the 5 proofs for God, very famous. So
this one here.
But notice how long it's taken for us to get to that point. I know where I'm heading with this. But you see, each time the text had to be loaded, point, click, load, point, click, load, point, click, load. We've got to be able to do better than this. But what you can do by looking at these structures is you can get a sense of how Aquinas argues, and it's worth saying something about that because it's so systematic. So if he's going to argue a question like God does exist, he's going to begin by considering the objections and give reasons why people would hold those views. And then he presents his own arguments, and then he responds to the objections. So it's a very courteous way of arguing because he considers his opponents a very very professional way of arguing, because his opponent's objections makes his own position stronger. So each article is very rigorously structured, and the articles themselves are structured into questions, and the questions are structured into larger blocks of text within this huge work called the Summa Theologiae, which he didn't quite finish before he died, but it is his most famous work, and much of the material is the best that anyone's ever written on philosophy and theology. So
that's fantastic. One of the questions that we had, if I may, is how would you prefer to receive, for example, the submissions? Because clearly one of the questions is, well, first of all, do people need to know Latin? I would say no. No,
absolutely not. And what I recommend is go to something like a wiki article to start with in whatever language you feel comfortable with, and just get a general idea of how these works are structured. But that's one of the beauties of this, is that this is a purely formal problem. The material content, we have to make that accessible, but it doesn't matter the language. So Aquinas has now been translated into Chinese, for example, but the structure won't change. So he is an absolutely rigorously structured thinker. The problem is that in the Middle Ages, he didn't have computers, so he had to memorize a lot of this stuff, and he had an extraordinary capacity for building semantic structures and learning them. But we ought to be able to navigate through those things.
Fantastic. The other question that I received, let me just say questions. The other question I said, how should we submit the?
How submit? Okay, right. So again, we haven't made a formal call for applications yet. So it's a little bit provisional.
Yes, totally fine. I think also it might be the case that those that have promising descriptions, you might then contact directly and request follow-up. So I think just please explain the first level of description that you'd like to receive.
Yes. So the basic sort of things that we're interested in are how to get at detail without losing context. And I'm very happy to accept a short description, but along with, say, a little sketch of ideas. So, how
in some way he would like it to be visualized, because that's the whole point, correct?
Visual,
You don't worry, but you don't worry too much whether it is hand drawn or photoshopped or.
Absolutely. Yes.
So that's okay. Fantastic.
Yes. That something doesn't matter. We can make it look beautiful later. But this is a visualization program, a project. So that's the key. Somehow, the applicant has to show visual ideas.
Yeah, hand drawn sketch, Photoshop, coded animation, or anything else. I
can add something else now, which is that these questions are very useful because they're helping us to understand what we need to put into the call for applications.
Absolutely.
So,
can you talk about the call for applications in the sense of, so if people spend, their summer, their free time learning this completely new area for them, sketching out, discussing, what is it that we mentioned some possible prizes for the hackathon for those that you award? If you would be willing to recap, and those, that would be fantastic.
I didn't quite catch everything you said there, Lo. Could you just say?
Let's start with the simple one. What prizes will be?
What prizes? Okay, fine.
Awarded? Let's start with that, and then the long term. Where can we go from here?
Right. So basically, a little mixture of things here. So we can give a small cash award,
okay.
And I think give around about $1,000 and some smaller runners-up prizes.
I think if it's all right to say, I think we mentioned perhaps, let's say, 1,000 for the top prize, and
yes,
maybe 250 for the first, each for the first runner-up and second runner-up. I think you reserve the right not to award this if there isn't a quality one, but if there is, then also if there are maybe more people, then we can consider somehow finding something for them. I hope you would.
But let me go a bit further, because what we want to do is to then develop a proposal that can be submitted to funding agencies. We already talked to people in the States about the possibility of turning this into a project. And it's one of these projects where we're just waiting for ideas to make it happen. Because it's a very fundable project. It's quite an exciting project for people to want to get involved with. So there's a longer-term potential, which is that this could build up into a larger funded project with grants. At the moment, we're just short of ideas, and we're looking for, and we don't really know where to turn, because people who work in coding often don't have a very good ability to visualize things. They're not the same people who do artwork. And very few people have managed to close that gap. And of course, Apple is one of the very few exceptions who they are almost fanatic about the visual experience. And somehow we need to do this for these big digital humanities databases. What happens at the moment is that people spend a lot of time and money building big projects, but in the end, they're often very unusable, because the human-computer interface is done last, and we've got to turn that around. And in this case, all the hard work's been done, because the works of Thomas Aquinas have been digitized for a long time. This is what the world's first digital humanities project. But the human-computer interface is, as you can see, not very good. And that's what scholars are working on at the moment, and it's not really good enough. What I've often thought, just to go a bit further with this, is that the works of Thomas Aquinas resemble, at least in my own imagination, something like a fractal, where as you go deeper, you get ever more. A fractal is something which has scale invariance. So as you expand, you see more levels of detail opening up and similar sorts of patterns. It's not quite like that, but there's something like that with Aquinas' work. And so what we need to combine these two things: the ability to go into detail, but not lose the bigger picture. Other things that are interested, which will be very much of interest, will be the ability to link things together in the corpus.
Mm-hmm.
So the references to particular words, that sort of things, for scholars to be able to put links in themselves to things that they're interested in, label areas, to be able to flick languages, Latin, German, Chinese, maybe a little dial or something like that, to be able to move from one to the other. So yeah, it's this the big challenge again and again is to make the data manageable.
Yes. Fantastic. I have some question for you, if I may.
Yes.
You can just give me your suggestions. Let's see. Sorry. Make the data manageable. Okay, let me just say, do you have, Father Andrew, have you seen or done any preliminary research, or would you welcome, if somebody completed this, some preliminary research of any other, basically the state of the art in corpus linguistics? Because many of the features that you are describing are probably similar across many different texts. So this might apply to the Bible. It might apply to, I don't know, maybe search and retrieval. I'm thinking about Google's and other search engines. It might actually relate to natural language processing, so sentiment analysis, topic selection, categorization. I understand that you're looking mostly for the creative and the idea, and the ideas, perhaps something that has never been done before even. But at the same time, do you already have something that summarizes what has been done, or would you welcome if the proposals included a little bit of a, basically a little bit of a, either not so much a literature review, but a review of the digital landscape of corpus interactions?
Well, we will certainly welcome such things. The digital humanities projects that I've seen are just not that good. If you take, for example, the Christian Bible, it's been digitized. Many different editions have been digitized. There are many different tools out there. They're not that easy to use, I would say. And what's often, so for example, there will be lots of opportunities to see different structures of the Gospels in different ways. But I find the tools are actually underdeveloped. So I think we are actually looking for something new. It may be that there are ideas already out there that we haven't found, but I have to say I haven't found much at the moment, which is one reason why.
That's fantastic. That was my question. Great.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll just quickly go back to how to submit, because I think people need, the more details we can give, the better. I'm going to say that I'll include a link here to a private GitHub Classroom repository, to which you need to make a pull request to submit. Include in the pull request the following. So we'll have a description of the idea, preferably with features, benefits, and resources needed to realize it. Okay, this should be in a readme.md in GitHub flavor markdown. This is what I'm writing in right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Number 2 is, I think, a link to a maximum 2-minute unlisted YouTube video. Unlisted YouTube video that runs the demo. You can use your computer to screencast or a phone. We are not looking for production value,
Right.
but instead a clear, concise, and what I'm trying to say, the not decisive, but demonstrative demonstration. Yeah, clear and concise demonstration. Example, if you have hand-drawn sketches, please animate the pieces of paper moving.
You don't make it too technically complex for people.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Just hold up a piece of paper and explain what happens here. That would be fine. You know.
Yeah, I should say this. Actually, that's very interesting. I don't know if it was you who I've spoken with about the Google glasses. Do you remember them?
Yes.
They were, I think, a little ahead of their time, and they will come back. But the very first time when the idea came up, the way they prototyped the Google glasses is mind-blowingly simple. And I wanted to bring that up here. What they did is they gave somebody a pair of glasses. I'm going to just stop my screen sharing for a second and show myself. So they gave somebody an extra pair of glasses. They taped, I want to say, a couple of pencils onto this side just so it was heavier. Maybe some pens, like lead pens. They had the person put on the extra glasses. And then they used a projector from behind the person and projected some images onto the white wall in front of them. And then they gave instructions: walk here, raise your hand, do that. And so it was zero coding. It was completely low tech in the sense, but they wanted to demonstrate and play with and experience the potential or the reality, the alternative reality. And so this is what I'm suggesting to all of you: is think of how can you demonstrate the meaning, and don't worry so much about the implementation just yet. This is a little bit different hackathon from, for example, the coding exercises that we have done where you want a result right away.
Yeah. If we have some good ideas, we can then put those into a professionally produced animation later.
Okay.
Which we use as part of the bid for funding.
And then third one, if you do have sort of digital assets, such as, I don't know, Photoshop files, animations, or code, then include those as well. Okay, I think this is it. And very briefly, let's then agree, I think, to the it's a little bit grading rubric. It's like a little strange because it's a creative project, but I know that people will be asking, so I'll just say it right now. Okay, the greatest weight is the sort of wow factor, the creativity. Second, we will look at I would say the writing skill as well, no? Because the person or the ability to convey, the ability to communicate the idea, because I assume that if somebody is both creative and able to communicate it, then you would be perhaps able to invite them to be a collaborator together with the University of Oxford and the theology faculty and maybe the Ian Ramsey Center for Science and Religion to work with you. So I think these two are the most important. Yeah?
Yes, and we'll give some consideration to things like technical implementation. So some ideas might still be very technically very difficult to implement. We can't visualize images in space at the moment. but that's not really the main consideration. It's really the creative aspects.
Okay,
although someone says something completely impossible with current technology, of course, that will not be something we could hope to get a project for.
Fantastic. Let me pop out the questions and quickly go through them. We have 18 people watching at the moment.
Hello.
Live. Hello. Christina Tarantino, Anusha Lihala, Francis, hi, Rox, Sarah, Jessie, Mara, Christine, Ash, Marta Bodora, Sea Lion, Ola, good morning. Okay, Rox says, very excited to have a clear understanding of what is desired for this project. Thank you. Good morning and greetings to Father Dr. Pinsent. Ash, the current page is all in Latin. Is that something that they would like preserved? Would having translations be helpful, or is it more important that everyone sees the exact same text? We covered this a little bit, but would you like to?
Oh, just
this is Ash asking.
Yes, if you just Google Summa Theologiae, Thomas Aquinas, or Summa Theologica, people use two different ways of spelling it. You'll find there are English versions online as well. The whole of the work, all 3,000 or so articles, and there are other languages as well. So I wouldn't. But the structure is always the same, and the structure is what we're interested in.
Very good, thank you. I think that is. Where is it? Structure. Get an idea of how the ideas are structured. Yeah, excellent. Good. Oh, here it is. Marta Bodoira, maybe it would be great to give more information about rhetoric. This way to build a text is really different from the English one from a semantic point of view.
Apologies, Marta, I don't fully understand the question there.
Me neither. Marta, would you like to elaborate a little bit? I think it's something interesting that you're getting into.
Okay. Is it the issue? Yes, it's an unusual way to. Okay. The way we write documents today is very different to what they did in the Middle Ages. So is that the issue? Because yes, this is not the way that we typically write in academia today, for example. But it was a written version of how ideas were discussed in the High Middle Ages at the world's first universities. And the whole essence of what they did was dialogue. So people would make objections and responses would be given. What you're seeing here is a formalized written version of that in Aquinas' Summa Theologiae. Now, modern academics do that, but they do it more implicitly. So, anyone writing a good paper should always begin by looking at the objections to the position that he or she holds. So that way it's more courteous, and you get a better paper at the end. So we still follow some of this approach implicitly, but certainly this is not. It may be a little bit unfamiliar. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Really good discussion starting here. Okay. English translation, it's available in Gutenberg. Excellent. Yes, Marta Bodora says yes. Google Translate will not, yes, it won't be good enough. Rox mentions, so we are looking more strongly for the visual experience of the database. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Wow, this is well phrased. Rox, can I quote you, please? This is really good. I will put this into the discussion. Edit to Rox. Yeah. I'll just say we. The database, absolutely. Well pointed out, Rox. Thank you. Simple functionality as well. So leaning on usability and visual interest without losing the big picture. Exactly. Ash, oh yeah, something I encountered when I was trying to find a way to organize the data. I already attempted a bit. What are the numbers, abbreviations by each paragraph? What do they stand for? Right. I'm guessing most of them are like the question article ones, but there's also a very big number. It is just an ID per paragraph.
Yes, in some database versions online, there is just a long number given, and I have to say I'm not quite sure, but I think that each discrete chunk of data has a distinct number. So you can think of it like the index for the computer's point of view. But in terms of the little abbreviated letters like arg or add, these are abbreviations of Latin words, but they are indicating what point a person is in the argument. So what's worth looking up is probably find there's an article somewhere on how Aquinas structures an article. We must put this into the call for papers for applications. So maybe worth making a note of that, Ilona.
Is there a paper we could reference for them to read?
I'm off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure, but there are lots of introductions to this. So how Aquinas structures an article.
Right.
I'm pretty certain I can find something in about a minute or two.
Okay, maybe we can do this right afterwards. I will put references to. Yeah, this is just intended to get you started. I think this is a very good question. At the same time, I would say, yes, it is part of the digital humanities scholar's job to do this type of investigative journalism, is that you do have to try to track down, for example, you know, if you're lucky, then the people creating this had some documentation, or at least they had some contact details, and you could perhaps follow up with them. If not, then you can try looking at academic papers in open, whatever you have access to, right? If you only have access to the open databases, then start there. If you are affiliated with a university and have the luxury to pay databases, then look through who has worked with this data set already in some kind of academic setting, because they usually are very open to being contacted. So you're very welcome to do your own work, and please do so, because it is really, if you have some questions, then probably the answers are out there for you. Please look for them. Reading on usability, something, yes. I also have the feeling, Ash, I'm not extremely sure about this one, but many digital humanities projects, for example, if they are stored in XML or TEI, these are two large formats that are common for digital humanities, then those might be but those might be element IDs. Yes. And hopefully this you can find out from the data set itself. Mm. Okay. Ancient rhetoric structure, quite different. Yes, structure. Would you like the works of other authors referenced on this site to be included in our visualizations? Absolutely. This is academic life. Do not plagiarize Christian Harris. Absolutely. I should say that. You will absolutely, if we find out, we will disqualify anybody who plagiarizes. Yes. That's a good point. We should make this.
I wonder, it's a slightly different question here. So Aquinas himself quotes a lot of other sources.
Oh, this is the question of within the text.
I think so. So so he's certainly quoting from scriptures. He's quoting from Greek philosophers. He's quoting from Arabic commentators. Everyone who was anyone in the history of thought, for which they had documentary access in the 13th century, he's quoting. So certainly the ability to
I think, if possible,
obviously we need links of some sort to other works. What the status is of those works in terms of their current status as digital humanities projects is very variable. So I don't want the project to rise or fall on the quality of picking up now a reference from Aristotle, for example. But it's a sort of thing this is a sort of extension issue for later. So if we were to get the basic product one day.
Okay. Yeah. For the basic idea, it is fine. Make your own judgment. Okay? Okay, excellent. Wow, this is a really good question. I hope we answered both possibilities. Excellent. It's kind of funny, there were some standard Latin abbreviations, so I could understand. I didn't get far, so I didn't know what to look for. Oh, I see, Ash. In that case, I think the references that we can send you, there is usually a glossary at the beginning or list of abbreviations, and I think that we can share. Yeah, I think a list of abbreviations is quite common, so we can share that. Very good, Ash. Thank you for the clarification. There are some works on this side that analyze or comment on Saint Aquinas' work.
Gosh. Well, people have been commenting on Saint Thomas Aquinas' work for 750 years. I do myself. So there's infinite scope for that. For individual scholars, they might want to add their own notes somewhere. The ability to use a database as a tool for their own research. The problem is if we add too much commentary, then I suspect we'll be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think the issue here is to do a little well. So, for example, one thing I've wanted to do as a very long-term project is to translate some of Aquinas' terms into contemporary psychology. So often you find there are overlaps in the ideas, but are different disciplines. So it's like two worlds completely separated by centuries of different discourse. At the same time, a little well is better than a lot done badly, and the basic challenge is to get the core work of Aquinas himself accessible.
Okay, great. I think that's actually a good ending place here. So let's stay with what is available to us on the Corpus Thomisticum .org website. Let's see what can be done here. There are already other languages. You are welcome to use any tools whatsoever, and we are interested mostly in your visual creativity.
That's right. Yes.
So thank you so much. It is very meaningful in some ways, to be honest. As Father Andrew mentioned, this was the first digital humanities project. It's quite amazing that in 1946, I believe.
That's right. There's actually a new book coming out called The Priest and the Punch Cards.
Oh.
About Roberto Buza, who was the priest who started digital humanities. And he saw the potential with the invention of computers to be able to access and analyze this extraordinarily ordered work of Aquinas. There are many others that have some resemblance to him in the Middle Ages, but Aquinas is still the Einstein of theology. It's on a different scale in terms of quality and quantity. And as I think Ilona mentioned on an earlier video, IBM invested in this project for 30 years. Thomas Watson himself took an interest in this work, and it's an extraordinary achievement.
Okay. I think we will finish here. Thank you so much. Let me stop the screen sharing, and thank you.
And just to thank all of you who've taken part, because this is also very useful to me to know how to craft a slightly difficult call for applications. So this is very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And this will be up online. What you saw is what's going on. What I wanted to say is let's also set the deadline. Originally, I had said this during, I think I announced it at the beginning of month 2. But I would say we can extend this until the end of the Summer of Code, because today is September 13th. So we will set the deadline to be October 14th, which is the end of the Summer of Code. I think we can be generous and give until midnight, like 1 minute before midnight British Standard Time. So I'll put this up as well. and very much looking forward to seeing suggestions. So thank you so much.
We need to talk together a bit more, but that's very good. Great.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Father Andrew. Let's give ourselves a round of applause, and goodbye. Please stay on. I'll just stop the broadcast.
Okay, so